I'm cutting you off, Luke. Dad said it loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. Forks paused midair, heads turned, and my mother's face froze in that fake, polite smile she wore for public humiliation. The air felt heavy with his pride. The waiter had just set my plate down when Dad leaned back, swirling his wine, grinning like he'd won something. You've had everything handed to you, he went on. It's time you learned how the real world works. No more money, no apartment, nothing. Heat burned behind my eyes. The world blurred as my sister, Madison, smirked beside him. Finally, she muttered, not even hiding it. I wanted to disappear, but I didn't. I looked straight at him, my voice steady. Are you sure about that, Dad? He raised his glass. Absolutely. That's when the waiter returned, sliding an envelope onto the table. For Mr. Bennett, he said. Dad frowned. The envelope had my name on it. When he opened it, his smile faltered. His fingers stiffened, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. He didn't speak for several seconds, just stared at the note like it had caught fire in his hands. What's that? Madison asked, leaning in. Dad crumpled the paper and stuffed it in his pocket. Nothing, he snapped. His voice was tight, controlled, but his jaw twitched. I sat back, my heart pounding, pretending not to notice. He had no idea that this dinner, this public scene, was exactly what I wanted. Dinner's on me, I said softly. He glared at me confused, but I smiled, calm, collected. For the first time, he looked small. That's when the story really began. My name is Luke Bennett, and tonight, my father tried to destroy me. He just didn't know I'd been waiting for this moment for a long, long time. Flashback, 2 months earlier. I was sitting on the porch of my father's estate, waiting for him to show up for my graduation dinner. He didn't. He'd promised he would. But apparently Madison's career launch event was more important. That night, he sent me a text. You'll understand one day, son. You need to grow up. It wasn't new. My whole life, he'd made me feel like I was never enough. Madison could crash a car, lose money, lie to investors, and he'd cover it up with a smile. But when I got a scholarship, he called it luck. He ran construction empire, Bennett Developments. Everyone worshipped him. Tall, sharp suit, the American dream. But at home, he was a tyrant who measured love in dollars and obedience. Mom stayed quiet. She always did. That was the night I decided. If he ever tried to cut me off, I'd be ready. And I was. It started small. I took a part-time job at one of his lesser-known construction sites, under a fake name. Nobody knew who I was. I wanted to see what it was really like working for him from the ground up. What I found shocked me. Underpaid workers, fake safety reports, corners cut to save millions. I documented everything. Quietly, carefully, every form, every message, every voice memo. Then one day I met Nathan, the site manager. He told me something that made my blood run cold. Your dad's been funneling money into offshore accounts, using employee benefits as cover. That was when I stopped being the son he could humiliate and became the son who'd take him down. Still, I kept smiling at family dinners. Still called him Dad. Because revenge isn't loud. It's patient. And mine had just begun. By the time the dinner happened, I already had everything in place. The note he received tonight, that was my quiet message, the spark that would set the whole truth on fire. But watching him smirk and toast my failure, I felt something strange, grief. Because despite everything he'd done, part of me still loved him. I wanted him to look at me the way he looked at Madison, with pride, not disappointment. Instead, he looked like he was enjoying my pain. You'll thank me one day, he said, waving his hand dismissively. You're weak, Luke. This is for your own good. I smiled faintly. If you say so. Inside, my heart cracked, but my mind stayed cold, because he thought he'd cut me off from his world. He had no idea I'd already built my own. I started small. A part-time job at a construction site. Dad didn't know I was watching. I wore plain clothes, kept my head down, and learned everything, from employee schedules to contractor invoices. One day, Nathan, the site manager, pulled me aside. His voice was low. Luke, your dad's hiding money. Offshore accounts. Fake contracts. He's using the company to cover his tracks. I froze. My stomach churned. That's when the rage hit. The kind you can't fake. All my life, he had humiliated me, treated me like I didn't belong. And now I knew the truth. He hadn't just been a bad father. He'd stolen from everyone, including Mom. But I didn't say a word. I just nodded, my mind spinning. I would take him down. Slowly. Quietly. Perfectly. Because revenge isn't about anger. It's about timing. At night, I pored over his company records, old emails, and contracts I could access. Every error, every shortcut, every lie became part of a bigger picture. I discovered offshore accounts. I found falsified documents. I uncovered properties under fake names. And worst of all, every step he'd taken to build his empire was built on Mom's inheritance. I cried once that night, sitting alone on the cold floor of my apartment. Not because I was scared, but because the man who was supposed to protect me had spent my entire life lying. Then I wiped my tears. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about justice. And justice, I realized, needed patience. Evelyn, Mom's best friend, became my secret partner. She had been a retired auditor, sharp as a razor. When I showed her what I'd found, her face went pale. Luke, this is serious. He's going to lose everything if anyone sees this. I swallowed hard, then let them see it. Her eyes softened. Are you ready for what that will do to him? I nodded. I don't want him destroyed for me. I want him destroyed for what he did to Mom and to me. And that's when the real plan began. For months, we worked in silence. Night after night, we pieced together proof. Every hidden account, every falsified signature, every property that was technically mine by law. I watched Dad from afar. Family dinners, business meetings. He was proud, arrogant, and completely unaware of the storm coming. Sometimes, I want to confront him, to scream at him for everything he'd done. But I didn't, because the sweetest revenge isn't loud. It's patient, and mine was perfect. By the time the fateful dinner came, I had everything in place. The note, the envelope in the waiter's hand, was a simple piece of paper. Just words. Nothing flashy. But it contained a spark that would ignite everything. I sat across from Dad, Madison leaning against him, laughing at every joke he made at my expense. He had no idea that I wasn't weak. I smiled faintly. Inside, my heart was pounding, my hands trembling just slightly, but my mind was calm, because this night wasn't about humiliation anymore. It was the first act of a story he would never forget, and it was only the beginning. I didn't cry when Dad cut me off. I didn't yell. I just walked out of that restaurant, leaving their laughter behind me. Back in my apartment, I locked the door and let the silence settle. It wasn't peace. It was purpose. I started planning my next moves carefully. Every document I found, every transaction I traced, every shady deal Dad had hidden, it all became a puzzle I was determined to solve. Late at night, I pored over spreadsheets and emails, my apartment lit only by the glow of my laptop. My hands cramped. My eyes stung. But the fire in my chest burned brighter than exhaustion. I wasn't just angry. I was alive in a way I hadn't been for years. And somewhere deep inside, a tiny voice whispered, "He deserves every bit of this." Weeks turned into months. I watched Dad's every move from afar. Family events, business meetings, charity galas. He never suspected me. He laughed and congratulated Ryan on achievements I had secretly accomplished years ago. I smiled, taking notes, memorizing patterns, collecting evidence. One night, I overheard him boasting to a board member. "It's all mine now," he said. "Every cent, every property, every contract. Nobody can touch me." I gritted my teeth. Nobody could see the cracks in his armor yet, but I had found the chink, and soon it would crumble everything. Evelyn became more than a mentor. She was my anchor. "You have to be patient," she told me one evening, sipping her tea. "Revenge isn't about breaking them quickly. It's about breaking them completely, piece by piece." I nodded, biting back the urge to explode with a desire to confront him directly. I had learned something crucial. Rage is loud, strategy is silent, and I wasn't here to rage. I was here to win. The night of the next family dinner arrived. Dad was the same as always, arrogant, loud, self-assured. Madison giggled at his jokes. Ryan mimicked his prideful grin. I sat quietly across from them, pretending to be weak. Inside, my mind raced. Every contract I had copied, every account I had traced, every offshore fund I had mapped. The waiter slid the envelope toward Dad. He opened it slowly, and his face betrayed him for a split second, a flicker of fear. But he recovered and laughed, trying to dismiss it. I smiled faintly. Patience. That flicker was all I needed. Back at my apartment that night, I sat on the floor, surrounded by files. I could almost hear Dad laughing during dinner, imagining he'd humiliated me permanently. I imagined him thinking I was powerless. And for a moment, I let myself smile, not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally understood the power of waiting, of watching, of planning. The note hadn't revealed its full meaning yet. Not to him. And that was perfect, because when it did, everything would change. It started with a phone call. Dad's voice trembled. Something I had never heard before. "Luke, we need to talk. Now." I stayed calm. I didn't answer. He called again. His tone shifted from pleading to anger, then back to desperation. "You ungrateful brat. How could you do this to me?" I sat silently on the couch, staring at the files spread across my table. Copies of contracts, bank statements, emails, proof. I let his fury wash over me like water on stone. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't angry. I was ready, and I smiled. Ryan came next. He barged into my apartment, red-faced and shaking. "What did you do?" he demanded. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Tell me something I don't know." He lunged toward me, but I stayed still, letting him realize he was powerless. I didn't sign anything," he stammered. I held up a copy of his signature on a fake investor document. His face went pale. His world was unraveling, and he didn't even understand how. Sometimes, watching someone finally face reality is more satisfying than victory itself. By the following week, the company began to crack. Employees whispered in the hallways. Investors called with questions. News outlets sniffed out rumors. Dad tried to hold it together in board meetings, but his sharp suit couldn't hide the panic behind his eyes. I watched him from afar, attending one of my old favorite coffee shops he used to take me to. The boy he had humiliated had become the storm he couldn't outrun, and it was only getting started. Evelyn called me one morning. "It's time to make the final move." I nodded. Everything had been prepared. Evidence sent. Accounts traced. Investors alerted. The IRS informed. Dad was about to lose everything. All of it. Because he had spent decades thinking he was untouchable. I didn't feel glee, exactly. I felt peace. I had survived his cruelty, and now the world would see the truth. But the note hadn't been revealed yet. Not to him. And that suspense, the quiet panic building inside him, was the final piece of justice. The day of confrontation came. Dad stood in the boardroom, shaking, papers scattered in front of him. Investors stared at him. Employees waited in tension. He searched the room, looking for me. I was outside, watching silently, phone in hand. When he finally opened the envelope, again, the color drained from his face. The magnitude of what he had lost hit him like a physical blow. I didn't rush to confront him. I stayed quiet. I just watched. Because sometimes watching someone's empire crumble is the most satisfying part of justice. And yet, the note still held secrets he hadn't yet realized. Secrets that would destroy him completely. 6 months had passed since the boardroom meltdown. Dad's empire was in ruins. Bennett Developments, once untouchable, was frozen, stripped of credibility, and facing multiple lawsuits. I walked through the empty office halls, remembering every insult, every time he had humiliated me. His empire was built on Mom's money and lies, and now it belonged to no one. I picked up a single envelope from the front desk. It was addressed to Dad, an untouched copy of the note I had left in the restaurant a month ago. Inside was the audit, the proof, the chain of every transaction, he thought was secret. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't in years. Closure. The note had contained more than evidence. It detailed every account, every property, and every falsified document. But it also included a message. Dad, you taught me about pride, arrogance, and cruelty. I've learned from you. This is the only way I could protect myself. And honor, Mom. The truth is yours to face. Love, Luke. Reading it again, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and satisfaction. This wasn't just revenge. It was justice, wrapped in clarity. Dad had no one to blame but himself. He had built his life on lies, and now the world saw them. I found Mom's old cabin tucked away in the mountains. It smelled like cedar and the faint trace of her perfume. I sat at the table, tracing her handwriting on old letters. One fell open to a quote she had loved. Strength isn't about what you take from others. It's about what you build despite them. I realized that's exactly what I had done. While Dad destroyed himself with arrogance, I had quietly reclaimed everything he thought he owned. My mother's legacy, my future, my dignity. I smiled, tears spilling, because freedom finally tasted like peace. Months later, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was Dad's old watch, engraved with Mom's words. For Luke, when he's ready. I held it, understanding finally. He hadn't left it for Dad. It was meant for me, to remind me that even in the darkest betrayal, patience and courage would be rewarded. I didn't feel the need to gloat. I didn't want him to beg or curse. I only felt calm, victorious, and alive. I reopened the company under a new name, Phoenix Estates. We built affordable homes for struggling families, single mothers, and those Dad had ignored. Every brick, every project, every home became proof that life could be rebuilt stronger than before. I placed Dad's watch on my desk, not as a reminder of him, but of what I had become despite him. And finally, I knew this. I had survived, I had risen, and I had done it my way. Justice had been served, not loud, not cruel, but perfect. And for the first time, I truly smiled.